Welcome to Lizzie's workshop. Today I'm going to be making a mixed media canvas. I think you've read the title probably, and I called it Grow. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this old novel, and it's from 1950s. So the pages are a little bit browned and they've got a little bit of antique edges and all that stuff. So the reason that I chose this book is it is old and torn up and the cover's missing and the edges are all damaged and so forth. And also it's written in German. So I wanted a text background, but I didn't want a legible text background because I didn't want the words to have really any meaning. In the end, they do have a little bit of meaning because I am German, or part German anyways, and so are my children, of course my husband as well. So I wanted to include that, as this is kind of, everything I create is a little bit of a piece of me. So I always like finding elements that represent me in some fashion or another. So what I've done is I'm covering this page, and one of the things that's a step outside of the box for me is flipping and flopping the pages every which way. This is an excursion for me because I tend to be I guess you could call me a perfectionist scrapper or a perfectionist crafter, because I really like to have symmetry. I really like to have everything be even and everything be fair and everything be full of color and life and texture and all that stuff. So mismatching the text on this canvas is actually quite a diversion for me. And I practiced this, and you saw this on my other mixed media canvas, the All That I Love canvas. If you haven't seen that video, go back to my channel when you're done watching this video and take a peek. So I'm going to fast forward at one point here, and basically, you know, you get the gist of what I'm doing here. All I'm doing is going around the edges and around the top with this golden brand gel medium, and this is a matte gel medium because I wanted everything to adhere to it later on. I'm kind of using it as a glue. You can use other brands, and it doesn't really matter, but I really like that one page that I put in the center. By the time I'm done this canvas, it really doesn't matter, but I really like that I put that one page in the center at this point. So my next step, once everything was covered with paper and I was appropriately pleased with how it had turned out, I went through it and covered the entire canvas with another layer of the matte gel medium. And the reason that I did this is to make sure that all the edges were laid down, to make sure that I hadn't missed any pieces of paper and so on. I just wanted to cover the entire canvas and make sure that it was all level. Part of the reason that I do this with the paper is because I like the differentiation of the layers of paper and the levels of paper when I do things like stamping and spraying and all that stuff. The next thing I'm going to do is take this stencil, and this stencil is from Prima Marketing Ink, and the design is by Valerie Foster Design. And I'm gluing it on, and I'm making the roll-on tape a little bit tacky so it doesn't stick forever, and making sure that I have everything covered. This scallop stencil is by Teresa Collins. So after I had done the gel medium, I let it dry overnight. So this isn't going on to a wet gel medium page. This is going on to a dry gel medium matte finish. The bottle of Mr. Huey's Color Mist doesn't tell me what they're made out of, so I didn't know if it was water-based or dye-based or ink-based or oil-based or what they were. And after doing this, I realized, oh, okay, they're just floating on top of my acrylic matte finish. So I had to do a little bit of change of mind here. I had to dab it with a dry cloth. I dabbed it with a wet cloth. I used my heat gun, just anything to try and get the ink to not move, because it was just floating on the top of the acrylic medium. And even after using my heat gun on it, it was still quite wet. So I took a little bit of a dry cloth, which was a piece of flannelette from a baby blanket, and did that, dabbed it up a little bit till it was dry. My next step is to use letterpress ink, which I won't do again. The cleanup for the letterpress ink in this type of situation is just not worth it. I couldn't figure out how to get this. There was just too much. I used too much. I put too much on everything. And normally letterpress ink is a wipe off with a soft cloth kind of product, but this was excruciatingly sticky, and I needed to have desperate measures of spraying everything with WD-40 to liquefy the ink, and then using dish soap and hot water to break it down and clean it up. Now I'm putting my hand under the canvas because canvas is a cloth and it flexes on the frame, and when I don't use it, the image doesn't come through because the fabric stretches on the frame. The next thing I'm doing is going back to that mask, and I am going to use it as a wrought iron sign hanging from the edge of the page there where I had previously put it as a mask. And while I remember to rub my hand over every little piece of it from the top, I should have also done it from the bottom because I did miss a piece. I like how it turned out. I like how it comes off here, and I won't change anything about it. But in the future, if I want to do this and I want a solid image, I will rub from the bottom. So this ink, I ended up blow drying it, and then I ended up letting it rest overnight, and then I blow dried it again, let it rest most of the day, blow dried it again, and finally was able to put my matte medium or my acrylic medium over top. I used the acrylic medium instead of the matte medium because I still wanted the ink to shine. I liked that glossy, shiny, metallic kind of black of this letterpress ink, so that was one benefit of it. But it still was, at this point, it still was a little bit tacky, and I didn't want it to rub off or smear or anything like that, so I did want to protect it and every other surface that it would have come into contact with. So yeah, I'm just using the acrylic gel medium, which is going to be a gloss finish, and I'm going to cover each element, and then I'm going to cover the rest of the page just to make it all meld together. If I were to use the letterpress ink again, I would use it properly with a letterpress system, and I would use it with the imprinting system from the letterpress, and I would use it with the products of letterpress. They do have a bottle of removal chemical, so to speak, to make it work so that it's not such a big mess. So I took my heat gun to this just to get the process to go, get it all warmed up, and get it to dry a little bit faster because it was still tacky underneath the acrylic medium. After this, I wanted to put on a wall, and I wanted to use the stencil. I didn't want to spray. I had done finished spraying, so I decided to use a paste and build up the wall to be a 3D element on this canvas. What I'm using there is gold gelatos by Faber-Castell, green gelatos by Faber-Castell, and a red gelato from Faber-Castell. If I'd been thinking, I would have sprayed this down with water to activate the Faber-Castell gelatos, but I didn't do that. I just kind of kept mixing and smashing and mixing some more. So the effect that I ended up getting was a mixture of the colors, but it wasn't quite what I had wanted. It wasn't a homogeneous mixture, and it wasn't a smooth color. There was a lot of chunks in it. There was a lot of I had to scrape it off quite a bit, and I had to keep mixing and mixing. It took me a good 5 to 10 minutes to get that into a condition in which I wanted to use it, which if I had just sprayed it with water, it would have taken me only like 2 minutes, but it is what it is. The final texture of the brick wall is quite chunky, and it does have speckles of red and green and gold in it, so I'm happy with it, but next time I will do it properly, so to speak. So I put a lot of paste on here, and this is just a Liquid X paste that I used for the base. And then this stencil is made by Crafter's Workshop. I hunted and hunted and hunted for a brick wall from Crafter's Workshop because I just love the brick walls. I have been drawing my brick walls and sketching them, and I carved my own stamp of a brick wall because I love the graphic of a brick wall, and it can be used in so many different ways, whether you're doing something that as a background or whether you're doing something as a foreground, whether you are creating a wall that vines crawl over, or you're creating something that shrubs sit in front of that you dress up with Christmas leaves, and as I did in one of my tags. There's a video on my channel, Lizzie's Workshop, that tells about shows you how to make a Christmas gift tag with the brick wall in the front and Christmas lights in the hedge in front of it. So what I'm doing next is I'm just going to layer it and keep going. I wanted this brick wall to extend right across the bottom of that page, and I'm really happy with the way that this wall turned out, especially when I get to the finishing of the brick wall. From this direction and this distance, it kind of looks like just a big muddy mess. But when you get closer to it, you can see the definition of every single block in the brick wall. I don't know why I'm obsessed with brick walls. It seems kind of odd. So I tried to cut this part out of the video, but my computer was not cooperating with me. What I'm doing here is I used a lot of paste and I used a lot of gelatos, and I didn't want to waste that. So what I did is I just put it onto the plastic wrapper that you would get with a packet of paper, and just smoothed it out and kept adding and used it all up so that later on I can cut that out, or cut out a single block or whatever I like, and I can add it to another project or whatever it ends up being. And because I put it on a clear something that's clear, I can use it on any project because it'll show through to the paper or stenciling or whatever that I put underneath it. Right now I'm just finishing the edges. I'm dragging whatever excess I have along the edge and dragging it down and around. I don't need to do this, but I did want the edges to be a little bit more finished than just being the paper edge. And I didn't do this with too much care. I didn't do this with too much precision. I just kind of did it. I plan to hang this on the wall, so I'm not going to worry too much about what you can and can't see. You're not really going to be looking at the bottom of it anyway, I hope, most of the time. So I just went and cleaned up my stuff, and the way that I clean up things like paste and gels and all that stuff is with baby wipes. I just kind of wipe it down and rub it with a cloth, and then it's all dry and ready for the next step. I let this dry overnight, and then I pulled out my leaves. I did draw an outline of where I wanted the leaves to go, just so that I wouldn't get carried away gluing on leaves and forget what my directive was. I drew it on just with a little bit of a Sharpie kind of fine point pen. And then I just started gluing on the leaves. If you want to see the video on how I made the leaves, the video is called Mixed Media Leaves. That's the making of these leaves and a set of aquamarine or bluish leaves as well. What I'm doing here is I'm just gluing them on. So I'm putting the matte gel medium down on the canvas, and then I'm putting the matte gel medium on the back of each leaf, and I'm actually pushing down on each leaf individually and holding it for a couple seconds because I want it to all stay where I put it. I had 3 extra leaves, so I thought, hey, we'll just throw them on here and make it look like we've got plants and stuff growing out on this side. And then I took my matte medium and I wanted to make sure that everything was adhered smoothly, and so I covered my entire set of leaves there with the matte medium to make sure that everything was smooth and cohesive and all glued together and stuck forever. And then I just grabbed my heating gun and ran it over top just to get the drying process going all the way from the top layer to the bottom layer. Here's my big shot, and I've pulled out the Spellbinders Shapeabilities Die Delights. This is the two die set called Tweets. It is a solid image of a bird, and then the fancy out on the top, that with all the scroll work and such. So I cut the scroll work out of black so that the bird fits in with the page. What I'm doing here is I'm poking out the scroll of the black bird. There's holes in the bottom of the die, and then I'm using just a pokey tool to try and get it all out and clear it all up and clean it all up. The base that I'm using is, I don't know what color it is, but it's a bright yellow. I don't have any bright yellow on my page, but I did want an accent color, something that was bright and something that would draw your eye to the bird. And it doesn't stay very bright because it kind of melts in with the paper kind of color, the brown. The yellow kind of melts in with the brown once I have the black overlay over top. So all I did was I took the garden green that I used in the leaves and I colored the base of the bird just to give the bird a little bit of shape and depth and texture. Then this strip that I'm using, this glue that I'm using, it's one of those this and that sticky dots. It's not a line of tape, it's sticky dots. And then I'm taking my pokey tool and cleaning out all the big spaces of the glue to try and create a, so there's not so much glue on the outside of this thing. Then what I'm doing is I'm going to glue the bird to its background, and I have this ball of glue on the tip of my pokey tool, and using that ball of glue that I've already got there, I'm going to use it as an eraser for all the other gaps and all the other little extra strings of glue. And if you've ever used a Xyron type of runner sticker maker, you will know exactly what I'm talking about with the strings of glue that kind of adhere to everything and just make a mess. I'm covering this in my matte medium. I want to solidify the color, make sure it doesn't move. I want to protect it from the top to the bottom, and then I'm going to let it dry. So now I want to find a home for my little bird. And I decided I wanted it at the end of this wrought iron scroll work here. And then when I put it on, it kind of, having the bird's tail go into the butterfly stamp, kind of lost the bird. So I decided to pull it up and move him over. So when you want to do this, you only have about 5 minutes to do it. Once that matte medium dries, you're kind of going to be making a mess of whatever element you pull off. So then I'm just going to cover this whole thing with that matte medium, and away we go. Then after the matte medium dried, I went through and I put on the glossy acrylic medium, gel medium, just to shine it all up and to seal it all in and to make it nice and shiny and beautiful and pretty. I did clean my brush, and then I grabbed these cheap little flowers, and they're probably either dollar store flowers or from the wedding section at Michael's. I have no idea now because they're just kind of my randoms box. I clipped off their stems and laid them all out, and then I grabbed my hot glue gun and glued them all on. I don't feel that this piece is quite finished. I do think that it's finished for now. The problem that I was having with this project is that because of life events getting in the way, and because of the time frames that I had to do little segments of the project, I ended up taking a week and a half to do this project, and I'm not sick of looking at it. I just don't want to overstep. You know, sometimes you make an error, and once I make an error, I can't go back. And I've already spent a week and a half on this, and I don't want to spend any more time on it because if I screw it up, I can't go back. These are old pieces from a Scrabble board, and I'm calling this piece Grow, G-R-O-W. I thought about this all week. I couldn't figure out what title I was going to use until basically the last moment. And the reason that I chose Grow is because titles such as every idea started with a seed, or every great plan started with a seed, and I kept, cycling through that trying to think of a simpler way to say that. So what I ended up with was Grow. Thank you for joining me on Lizzie's Workshop. I hope you've been inspired to create something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.